today's speakers are myself, Tom Riddle, I'm the Director of Survey and Research Solutions at VIB, and Mirza Baig, who is the Director of Digital Marketing at Quadient. And Mirza is going to speak today about a couple of important subjects. One that we've been asked to talk more and more about, which is a simulated live format, but also the next step beyond webinars, which are virtual events. We're seeing a lot of interest and trend on virtual events. And so today we're going to offer a gift card multiplier. So an extra $10 if you can chat to us your top 3 webinar takeaways. And we'll put an additional $50 on top of that later if you provide us a great tip or idea that we use on a subsequent webinar. So just chat us your idea and we'll contact you, and an additional $250 gift card if you're selected to present on a future webinar about a technique or a case study. And so just again, tell us that idea and we'll contact you. So it's a great opportunity to enhance your personal brand, but also to contribute something back to the community as well. And so our information sources today are the real-world experiences of our customers, with whom we promoted over 1,000 webinars. And the feedback falls into 2 areas. One is feedback that we've gotten from our customers on webinar performance, and then what we did is we drilled down and did interviews with the customers that reported the most exceptional results. And so, today's agenda, we're going to talk a bit about the COVID effect, and we're going to have an updated version of that because some very interesting things have happened since the last webinar where we talked about COVID, and those things trigger very, very imperative Q3 success strategies in 2 areas: how to outperform and also how to out-innovate. And then Mirza will be talking about some expert tips in the areas I just mentioned, but a real key point to this webinar that I think everybody will find extremely interesting is we're going to talk about a hot new format, the lean coffee engagement model. One of the advantages of working with VIB is because we help customers with so many different types of event promotion, we're really in that catbird seat. We get to see very, very early emerging new promising engagement vehicles, and we're in a position to help measure those results and determine when and if we should present that information to you. And lastly, we're going to talk about some VIB success factors, how we can help you be more successful and be a webinar rock star. And so lastly, top tips from previous Art and Science webinars will be included in the follow-up slides as well. And so now let's talk about the COVID-19 effect. It's really one of the most fundamental society drivers that's existed for at least during my lifetime. And just to review the past, we talked a bit about how we were experiencing year-to-year growth in webinar demand from our customers. And then we started seeing a series of events, and those events correlated with increased interest and demand for webinars. And so our May webinar, we were at what we thought was the new normal. But things have changed since then. Now we're at this period where there's really attention saturation. Webinars are the best available spends, but now everybody is doing them, and they're doing more. So that's driving a couple imperative Q3 strategies that we're going to talk to you about here today. One is you have to outperform your competitors on webinars that you're doing today, but you also want to innovate beyond webinars. And Mirza will talk about the virtual event format, and I'll touch upon the lean coffee model as well. And so outperforming, one of the key issues today is webinar fatigue, the fatigue factor, but you can make that fatigue factor a competitive advantage. As we mentioned, webinars are more popular than ever due to the effect. The average prospect receives 5 to 7 webinar invites a week. And the challenge isn't how many of them interest them, it's really what their attention availability is. So you're competing now, it's a competitive game. You're competing for the best time slots, the best days, the best topics. formats, and more. And we're going to be touching on most all of those factors. And so you need to outperform on availability. Prospects have limited availability, as we mentioned, and their availability is less than their interest. So there's several formats that you can choose from today, and the most popular format is a live format. And so you select one particular date, and there's date dependencies. It could be speaker availability. Maybe there's a hot new announcement from your company and you want to time it then. So those can be good things. One thing about the live format is there's really a critical urgency to act, join now or miss the event. But what we're seeing is that there's a lot of competition for those live events. So an area that Mirza is going to talk about today, and we've seen explosive interest in with our customers, is a simulated live format. So what is it? It feels exactly like a live webinar. It's a recording, but with live Q&A and live chat and polling as well. The advantage of this format, which is exploding in popularity, is you could schedule these once a week. So if you have 4 a month, once a week, you have 4 times in that month the probability of that individual being able to attend. And there's low incremental effort in these. You've already created great content in that live webinar, so it's really set and forget. But another format that's seeing explosive growth, and there's ultimate availability, is on demand. And we've talked about this in past webinars, and we talked in the last webinar about the fact that 84% of individuals given the choice prefer the on-demand format. It's always available when they need it, but the other thing is they're watching it at their key point of need. And because of that, you've had the highest intent lead scores. And so there's another area that you can outperform, and this is really simple, and it's surprising how many people who are performing webinars don't pay attention to this or get it right. What's in it for them is the single most important interest driver. So you need to hammer it home on every touch along the way. And typically, what you want is no more than 3 sentences, 3 to 5 bullets max, but you can also do it in the webinar title as well. So one of the tips I'll provide today is the fact that use numbers in your titles wherever possible, because a title like 4 Tips to Secure Your Cloud Environment tells them right there in a very compact form what's in it for them today. And you want to make sure, again, you hammer this home every step of the way, every touch with them through the beginning of the webinar. So there's other ways you can outperform for attention. So topics and what's in it for you are key drivers of people's interest, fundamental drivers. But there's also style and formats. There's been studies done on style as a driver. An example would be the New York Times, the New York Post, or the New Yorker magazine. They may all cover the same content to one level or another, but their styles are very different. And there's a lot of studies that show people are attracted to certain styles. So you want to have style diversity. And we're seeing that a lot with the most successful performers today. So diversifying beyond that speaker slide format, which admittedly we're using today. So customers are having great results with expert roundtables, fireside chats, interview style, and then Q&A. Q&A is really interesting because it's free form. You're coming ahead of time with questions, and these subject matter experts are answering these questions for you in a free form, and it also ignites additional dialogue, which is great for engagement. And so now let's hear from Mirza Baig. Mirza's top tips, and today Mirza will be covering simulated live, virtual events, how to increase your ROI, and webinar follow-up.
Hey, Tom, thanks so very much for that introduction, and hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join the webcast or the webinar today. You could have been anywhere, but you decided to be here with us, so I do thank you all for it. I, like many of you, am a fellow marketer, and the reason I really do what I do in terms of marketing is really just to kind of enable sales. Now, some of you might be saying, well, you know, he's a marketing guy, but he's also talking up sales. Well, it's, to me, it's that handing off of the proverbial baton. You know, we do what we do in terms of marketing to generate pipeline. At Quadient, the company I work for, we're very much focused on generating marketing pipeline. It's all actually dashboarded out within our instance of Salesforce. So any one of our SLT, the senior leadership, or even the executives, even our CMO, can readily see where we stand in terms of generating actual marketing influenced deals. We do follow the Serious Decisions waterfall so that we can very realistically say, look, a person saw this piece of content, they kept engaging with us, whether through the website or our events, be it in real life or nowadays with everything, as Tom said, is going the way of virtual or simulated live, as I'll discuss. Everything is tracked all the way down to the finish of a deal or the close of a deal. So in terms of the webinar, as Tom said, one of the webinars that we've had a real strong, you know, kind of stance on, I guess by design, or maybe we kind of fell into this, is the simulated live webcast or webinar. And as Tom mentioned, simulated live really does mean that it's pre-recorded. So you can have that high production value. Even nowadays with COVID-19, you can very much easily record through a webcam, through a webcam on a laptop, but still get that professional production value, kind of edit out all the ums and ahs, put a nice soundtrack to it, you know, make sure that in terms of a dynamic background, somebody is still kind of sitting there maybe with natural lighting or with whatever lighting they can kind of rig together to give it some, you know, elevated kind of look and feel to the recording. You don't necessarily want just someone kind of staring into their webcam and kind of just, you know, be a talking head. You can be as creative as you want. There are a number of YouTube videos out there to kind of really up your game on that. So now to kind of really do a deep dive into the simulated live, what does it mean? We've had at Quadient the experience of working with two platforms in particular, On24, and we've recently switched over to Workcast. The reason we went with Workcast is they're simply just more robust in terms of mobile functionality, more HTML5 friendly, if you will. You gotta understand, a lot of the people that are our kind of audience members or prospects or clients or people that are attending our events, they work for large corporations. So they'll either work for a bank, they'll work for an insurance company, you know, they may even work for a government agency, like in the US, a healthcare insurance provider, or for the government itself. That's typically the kind of customer set we deal with, very high level enterprise. We're now starting to gain more traction, more of a foothold into the SMB space, particularly with some of our other solutions. But that being said, you gotta understand, a lot of laptops are locked down by corporate IT. You really can't do anything with it other than access it and run your programs that are already on your laptop or on your desktop tower. So for us, it was imperative that we have a browser like Chrome, which was at the time and still is like far above any of the other browsers out there, be it, you know, Explorer, or I guess they call themselves now Edge, or even Firefox or Dolphin and the like. But Chrome, we found, was the most capable of delivering on the full kind of experience, whether it was through your mobile phone, your tablet, or even your desktop and or laptop. So that was one of the reasons we went with Workcast. They were very, very much focused on the mobile experience, mobile friendly. And now, again, to go back to what the simulated live concept is, I've discussed a little bit at length as to how you can do the pre-recording. Once you have that recording, you put it into the platform, and what makes it live or simulated live is the fact that you have an actual live Q&A. So your speakers need to dedicate time to this. They need to be there. If it's a 9 o'clock start, have it at the 9 o'clock. Your speakers and panelists need to be there, and they'll engage with the audience members, at that time, and they'll be within the chat room. So, usually as far as webinars or webcasts go, you kind of have the Q&A at the very end. Maybe you're going to designate a 10-minute block, 15-minute block, or a 5-minute block, whatever the case is, but you need to have those speakers and or panelists there within the live Q&A chat room. And that's really what gives it the live element. So at the very end, you just want to put up a title slide and say, hey, now we're opening up the floor for live Q&A. And one thing that WorkCast does do, which is better than most competitors, is they actually have like a phone call-in at the end for an actual kind of more live call-in Q&A. So the questions are all typed in, yes, but you can actually have your presenters and or your panelists kind of actually answer the questions through the phone or through a virtual phone line, which gives it a further sense of liveness to it. And why are we going to do this as marketers? I mean, think of it. We're going to repurpose all of this content. Like how Tom or Sean, they're going to send you the recording afterwards. We're going to send the recording of the webinar or of this simulated live webcast. Once we then send the recording, we can do a number of things. We can repurpose the content, make it more snackable. You can have your content team work on it, do a series of infographics, a series of white papers, blogs, case studies, even put out a whole ebook if you want. Leverage the transcript of the said webcast or webinar, use the PowerPoint presentations within that. This is really, really one of those tried, tested, and true formats. Look, you have a piece of premium content. You're going to repurpose that content, have your content team work on it, work hand in hand with them, and then you do your series of webinar follow-ups, right? You're gonna engage with the folks that didn't attend, the folks that may have missed it, and maybe you even want to go the route of doing a nurture program, a nurture email program, and say, hey, here's the content, we've reformatted it. You already saw the virtual event. Maybe if you want to kind of send it, forward it on to your colleagues in the organization, or if you want to rewatch, here's session 1. Email 2 could be, here's session 2 to 4, or here's the ebook, or here's an infographic, or here's another piece of content that is supplementary to what we've provided from the webinar. And now I'm going to do a slight pivot from webinar or webcast, a simulated live version, to an entire virtual event. And I'm going to spend the next 2.5 or so minutes on that. So what I mean by this, and I really want everyone to think about it, and it's not all that difficult. If, like a real life event, you can do a virtual event in that you can have some opening remarks, maybe from a host or a pair of hosts, just like a newsroom. Then you have a opening keynote. In fact, if you want to go to quadient.com, you can see our last year's virtual event. We actually had a keynote speaker, great speaker, Rena Merchant from Google. She was directly from Google's headquarters. She's part of the UX leadership there. We had her as the keynote back in June of last year. Phenomenal speaker. And after the keynote session, we then had a research analyst kind of give a state of the union, kind of what's happening in the market, what's going on, pulse of the industry, and so on. Then we had a fireside chat. We actually did a roundtable. And if any of you, you can YouTube this as well. If any of you see how you can kind of look at, Hollywood Reporter does this really, really well with a roundtable. I mean, they've had like Denzel Washington, and all these iconic kind of directors, Martin Scorsese, and you need 4 to 5 video cameras to set this up properly, but you can do it. Even if you want to have a session on like a hot sauce or hot wings, hot ones, right, where you're eating hot sauce and it somehow becomes a confessional and people start crying and all these celebrities tell their most deep, darkest secrets. If you want to do something like that, why not? And then you can have some smaller breakout sessions with that. So, and then some final closing remarks. So like a real life event, you maybe want to make this 2.5 to 3 hours long, not more than that. You maybe want to even build in some breaks, maybe like a yoga break, a 15-minute yoga break, maybe a mindfulness break, maybe a break for people to kind of physically get up, have a coffee. And then what Workcast and both On24 allow is for each session to roll over, right? So you're in the browser experience, you don't have to change anything, you don't have to log back in, log out. In terms of security features, it's fantastic. It's all like encrypted for SEO. As long as you set this up on your landing page, on your website, it gets picked up really, really well. Just Google CX Day, that's C as in cat, X as in X-ray, CX Day, and you'll see our virtual event come up as well. So it really, really is a cost savings because you're basically doing it from a webinar or webcast type platform. You're doing it as a series of smaller webcast sessions back to back to back, but they're rolling over, and you can have fun with this, right? It's all about the content. It's all about the opportunity to repurpose that content and then go from there. So, you know, it really is up to your imagination as to how deep you want to go with the content, how you want to kind of engage with your audience post-event, and you can, you know, just blue sky and really have this as a flagship event virtually across the organization. So I think my time's up, Tom. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mirza. Those are great, great tips, and we'll be sharing that, of course, in the recording. And okay, sorry about that. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about Innovate. As we mentioned, so webinars can't replace physical events. One of the key aspects of motivators for physical events is that personal networking opportunity. And Mirza talked about virtual events, and we're going to talk about another opportunity for personal networking motivation that's driving another brand new model that we alluded to earlier, and that's the lean coffee model. So this is a hot new virtual format. It's based on a physical format that has been used by software developers to ideate for years now, since 2019. It's really hot on the West Coast in a physical format. So one of our customers had a product marketer who was a former Agile developer. And this individual thought, wow, this would be great to do this in a virtual way for lead generation and for engagement. So this has had off the charts customer validation from this first customer who's doing incredibly well with it. In fact, this customer is going to be speaking on our August 12th, 1 p.m. edition. So please check that off on your calendar. So what we're presenting to you today gives you an early mover opportunity, a competitive advantage through innovating. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So some of the key things are, it's actually the highest form of engagement, highest engagement scores, and also the highest brand affinity, that brand loyalty that's developed. And of course, it has that networking appeal motivator. So what is Lean Coffee? It's really a highly collaborative but structured, agendaless meeting which you facilitate. So your company will be the facilitator. So participants with shared interests and topics relevant to you, they gather, they build an agenda together, and they begin talking. And so those conversations are directed and productive because the agenda for the meeting was democratically generated. And then after a certain period of time, you vote if you want to continue on that topic or go on to a new topic. And at the end, those meeting highlights are shared. So we'll go over the process really quickly. And by the way, this is a great poster that you can get for free from Incrementor. So really quickly, the process is first of all, and I'll show you the landing page, you capture ideas of things that they want to talk about, which are guided and directed by you to some extent on the landing page when somebody is signing up. So then those subjects are all listed, they're grouped, and then the audience themselves, the participants, prioritize those. And then they collaborate on those subjects. There's typically a timer. It could be 8 minutes, it could be 10 minutes. They could upvote or downvote whether they want to continue on that topic or not. And at the end, everybody gets the follow-up. What are the action items? What were the key points? And all of that. And so one of the things that they find with this model, which is very similar to what we talked about in the past on webinars, that thought leadership, you don't have to talk about your product. If you're talking about the problems and challenges that people have, they're automatically going to assume you have the best solution. And you're mediating this session, facilitating this session as well. So the follow-up interest level is crazy off the charts with this format. So I mean, this, to our way of thinking, is the most interesting, uniquely new virtual concept that we've seen in years at VIB, and there's tremendous validation behind it. So we'll get in a little detail. We're running low on time. In the next segment on August 12th, we'll have the speaker go into that. So I wanted to show you really quickly kind of an example, and I've redacted it a little bit here, company name, because I don't want to steal that person's thunder. But you see, this is an example of a registration landing page. So they seed it with sample topics, but also ask for your input, or for the end user's input on topics they'd like to be seen covered as well. And then you submit these ideas during registration. And so the guided part of it is you get to select from certain topics. And these, of course, are ones that you as a company are interested in having dialogue around, but then they can also submit other topics, and they're typically very adjacent to these topics as well. And so that's the way it gets started. And it's very interesting because typically you want no more than 25 people, 24, 25 people in the session. So you get that real scarcity value, because what they'll see is when they register for sessions, they'll see which ones are sold out because they're already at that total, and another one will be added. So that scarcity value really motivates people to want to sign up. And so I think this has been a hit from the past, so I wanted to mention it one more time. One piece of old content is we're often asked what's the #1 email promotion subject line, and it's, can you join us in an hour? So I thought I'd re-mention that. And so how can we help? So we're experts at promoting virtual events. We get to see, we're in a catbird seat, we get to see what works and doesn't work firsthand in high volume. So we could also tip you off to new trends and give you a lot of consultative input through the process. But the key is very simple. We help you deliver the right people in the right volumes to make you a rock star in terms of your webinar performance. And we hear that particular term, rock star, from our customers all the time in thank you emails. So how does it work? Our Smart Send email service extends your reach safely to our engaged 2 million plus member community. And we could talk on another webinar a little bit more about why they're so engaged with us, but these are across actually all domains rather than just IT. The program is really economical. It starts at just $1,500, and the key is the precision level of targeting. Now, in the follow-up slide set, you can click on any of these individuals' names, and you could hear what they had to say on previous webinars about this service. And so more testimonials here. The bottom line here is people are saying, it's the highest performing email marketing, we're flexible, invest in our customers' success, and we're helping them overachieve. Very simple process. We take your HTML, you add unique tracking codes so you can measure our contribution to the campaign, and we send people to your landing pages and work on the honor system. And so benefits are registrations, of course, but for people that don't register, you're getting that awareness. They're on your page, and in both cases, you have that retargeting ability And a real key point is if you're in a pinch, and most people are, that moment of truth on the webinar where you just don't have the amount of attendees you want, we can help you out as a week notice. We'll be sending you the slides. Slides will include previous art and science installments.